This podcast is being powered by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. What up, y'all? Welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and I have a very special guest on my podcast today. It is the person who gave birth to me, my mother. And so we are going to be talking about my mom's mental health while raising me and my sister, and just kind of getting that inside scoop of how it was during her days with dealing with mental health. So, Mom, if you want to say hello to the world here.
Hello, everyone.
All right, perfect. Okay, so, Mom, are you ready to have a fun conversation and digging into your past?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Alrighty, so let's start out with talking about your life as a kid. So I do know Grandma did have some mental health issues such as depression. Did Grandma have anxiety as well?
I do not believe she had anxiety. I believe she had more of the depression part of it.
So where do you think you got your anxiety from?
I actually think I got it from my dad because I know he was an anxious person.
Really? That's interesting. So Grandma was depressed and Grandpa was anxious, and I'm both.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, unfortunately, you got both. So did I.
Yeah, I mean, I know you did, and I really think that anxiety does turn into depression because it just makes it makes it harder for you to get through life, so it just makes you depressed. All right, so question for you, which I think I may know the answer to this, but let's hear from you. Were there any mental health resources when you were a kid?
Not that I was aware of. There may have been some, but I didn't have any access to it.
When did you know that you had anxiety? Like, when did you know that something was not right up in there, upstairs?
No, since I was younger, actually, I've always felt anxious. I thought it was because I went to private schooling, Catholic schooling with the nuns, and always felt anxious that I felt that that was the reason for it. But it still went into my young adulthood. So I've always felt I've had the anxiety since I can remember, since maybe 10, 11, that I can have my first thinking of it.
Yeah, so do you think that this is actually a really good question I have for you? Do you think that going to Catholic school and just the way that system is set up, do you think that does trigger anxiety for people?
I think it can if you allow it. I always felt afraid that if I didn't do my homework, I'd be in big trouble.
Me
Um,
too. I mean, I think, you know, you
yes, I always felt that. And then I remember, ironically, um, when I got married, I would have dreams that I didn't do my homework, and
really,
it
I
was
didn't know this part.
yeah, because it was manifesting the responsibilities of paying bills, and
Right.
then it came back to me that way. But
Wow.
so that's how I felt. Yes, that's how I felt.
I didn't really think of it like that. And I do remember when I did go to Catholic schools that if you didn't do your homework, you'll get, I think it was like detention or something like that. I don't, or like lunch detention. It was more of lunch detention. And then when I went to public school, then when they were checking homework, they barely checked. Like the teacher would walk around, they'll just, if they see any type of writing on the paper, they're like, okay, she did it.
Yeah.
so
Yes,
so
that's
it
true.
yeah, so it definitely was just really weird how like when I went to like that Catholic school that they really checked and you had like hand it in and they'll go through it, and then all of a sudden it's like I went to public school and I'm like, why are they're so laid back here?
I did the same
And
thing. Well, I had gone to Catholic grammar school and I went to high school that was public. Not that I'm bad mouthing Catholic school. It gave me my faith, which I rely on greatly now. It's just I felt that there was too many things that they added to cause concern for people who had anxiety, which I to this day do not agree with.
Mhm.
But it was what it was back then, and you didn't know any better. But I did get my faith from going to the school, and I was brought up in the faith. So I do, I'm glad I have that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's good and bad. I feel like okay, so the bad part is of course the anxiety part of it, but the good part is that it really did shape on me as a person. And like, our conversation we had before this and how I kept prolonging our podcast because I kept my life was not together. So part of me was anxious because I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm so used to, having things put together and on point and such, and you even raised me that way too." So I was like, oh my goodness, I'm just not, I'm so behind schedule. I'm going to be late for things and such. And so that's the bad part of it because I am anxious about it. But then again, I see like, just experiencing meeting other people and such. There are like a lot of people who don't I don't know how to explain this, that aren't on top of things like we are.
Yeah,
Because
that's
you brought me up like that. You making sure like I'm always on top of things. Like I'm always be like 10 minutes or 15 minutes like early, or something like that. Or if I'm driving, like, oh my gosh, there's gonna be traffic or this or that.
well. Let me intercede here, though. I mean, that is a good thing and a bad thing in retrospect because I feel that that's the way I was brought up, and I didn't know any better, and I just went ahead and gave that to your sister and yourself, which is a good thing, but not when it causes you distress. That is not what I wanted to do, and I don't think that that's really important as much as it is today because um, life's too short to deal with worrying about the little things. And I just raised you responsibly, and I'm proud of that. But I think the anxiety part, I don't want that to interfere anymore. So let's try to get back away from it.
Yeah, it's actually like very interesting, like how you're explaining that. I know this is kind of like becoming like a mother daughter thing, kind of getting really deep here. So when you were raising me, did you have that type of mindset that you have now? You know what I mean? Like your approach with raising me and my sister.
Actually, I will tell you that I'm getting older has been a godsend because that lessens the feeling of responsibility. But I raised you according to the way that I was raised, and I believe you turned out to be a great person, and so did your sister, and I'm proud of that. Now, the guidelines that I followed, I look at now. Some of them I think and cringe, but I'm not. I'm not thinking anything worse. I don't think it was bad. It was just a different time, and it's become a different world today, and we have enough anxiety out there that we don't have to create our own.
Yeah. And I am really proud of like how you've really grown from that because I remember like as a kid, like your anxiety, like at the time I didn't know what depression was or anxiety was, but now like since I'm older and educated more about that, I'm like understanding like why you acted the way you act because life is just so stressful and I can't even imagine like, having kids while also living with that illness. So total props to you on that.
Thank you.
And so, did you have like any coping mechanisms when you were raising me and Tara? Like, who was the easiest? I'm actually really curious.
No, I wouldn't say anybody was the easiest. I think you were different types of children.
I think my sister, honestly. You told me I'm the challenge.
Yeah, you always were my challenge. But you were a challenge in a good way because um, I guess I saw in you things that I didn't even know were in me. So I had a lot of difficulties in all that time, and you wound up having the same and above more maybe, but you rose above it. I'm so very proud of what you're doing. I tell you that all the time, and it helps me to realize that there's hope. And I did get through what I had to get through, but not in the way that you have, because social media has been a great asset, and you can speak to a lot more people than I could, because back then it was all hush
Hmm.
hush. Back then it was, seen and not heard, pushing under the rug. There's something wrong with you. We don't want to discuss that. We don't want to go to that route. We always want to be happy. We don't want to think about the bad. So,
Yeah.
that-
Do you believe in like toxic positivity?
meaning that you always want to be happy, or I don't understand.
Yeah, meaning like
Oh,
for
yes,
me,
toxic.
my whole
You
yeah, like my philosophy is that I feel that always being positive and always like when you're feeling a certain like if you're feeling sadness and just blocking it out and just like being positive. I mean, of course it's great to be positive and try to change your mindset towards situations, but we're human and we are meant to feel every emotion. So, if you're feeling sad, like I feel like just feel it. Like what I do is that anytime I'm feeling like sad or whatever and it's like I need to let it out, I like listen to like this playlist on Spotify called Teardrop, and I think it's called Teardrop. Yeah. And it's pretty much like emo rap, and it's just like one of those like kind of music where it's just like it taught like you have to feel your feelings and it just puts you in a certain mood, but it makes me it's like kind of
yeah,
comforting.
it's a
You know
it's
what
a
I mean? Like
tool. It's a tool for
it's
you.
it's comforting, and but people may see it as, oh, this girl is so depressing, why would you want to promote sadness and such? But I'm not promoting sadness, I'm just being
Right.
real, you know what I
Right.
mean? And like a lot of people on social media is like, I get if they don't want to follow, I completely understand that, but that's just gonna be I'm gonna not pretend that I'm happy every single second. I'm gonna be real. If I'm in a mood, yeah, that's when I repost like all this like depressing stuff. But it's just like it's not I'm not saying like, oh, be sad or whatever, but I'm just saying that it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to not be okay. And people shouldn't have to hide
Right.
that. If they feel it, then it's
Well, growing
fine.
up, but when
And
I was growing up, you hid it, and you even hid it from your friends when your grandmother had a lot of issues. Your sister, I mean, your aunt and I had to. Your
nice.
aunt,
Yeah.
my sister, we had to cover over, and people would think that what's wrong with her, and then it would reflect me and my sister, and it was hard because there were no outlets. There were no outlets, so it's better now, much better.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I remember growing up that when we always avoided to go to grandma's. You know what I mean? And God rest her soul. I know we're like, I mean, obviously I mean, she could hear this,
Yeah,
up
I
there and
believe she
such.
does. I
But
believe it. And she's up there. She's rooting you on because she's probably saying, "Go out there, Justine. Tell them what it's really all about." Don't you remember
right,
you even wrote a poem for her when she passed? I don't know if you remember.
I
Yeah.
did. And I feel like, but then also with grandma, didn't she like deny having depression?
Yes, because then um it couldn't be talked about, and people would just keep saying, you're something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you. And then when she did finally allow herself to see someone, she inadvertently called the therapist a problem, that they were the problem. And that's what usually happens because you can't see what's going on in your own self. But now there's medication and now there's tools that we can use. And so she just would just be stubborn. And one time my sister and I finally got her to go on medication, and she was, what a difference. She was a joy to be around, a joy to
Yeah,
be around. And my sister and I were like, wow, why
yeah.
couldn't we have done this when she was younger? But we only did it when she got older, when my father passed. And then, but ironically, it happened, she got so well, and then she said, I'm better, and never took the meds anymore and went back.
And that's the
Hmm.
problem too. And it's like I'm guilty of that myself. That when I was first diagnosed with bipolar when I was 17, I remember I was
Yes.
on medication, and I was like, oh, I feel better, and then I
Yes,
just
and
stopped taking
I
them.
would be on top of you, and I'd say, Justine, what do you want to do? And you'd tell me this, and then I would respect your wishes. But now that you're an adult, I respect you mostly because you are, out of my realm now, but always will be in my heart. But go ahead.
And what's crazy is that I was on Abilify. So when I was, with my psychiatrist working around like what medication is going to work best for me, I told my psychiatrist, I'm like, oh, well, I was on Abilify for bipolar and I felt like it was really helping me. Like maybe I can go back on that. So he prescribed me it, and it actually was worse for me. So like not emotionally, but like when I was taking the medication, I started like having tremor, like I don't know if it's called tremors, but like I started just randomly like would would kind of like what is that
Shake.
called? Like dissociation? Like yeah, like kind of like dissociation. I saw like my hand moving for like a second. I'm like, this is kind of weird and kind of concerning. And I'm like, I thought I was gonna go into a seizure. So I went off it right away and I felt better. So I knew it was like that medication. But it's just weird how like when I was 17, it worked great. And then now I'm 25 and it's like almost putting me into like a seizure or something like that. So, I mean, I don't think I
Well,
was going to
you
go into a
just
seizure.
you
So,
need to keep, I mean, you're an adult now and you need to know your body, and you do know your body like everybody else, and you make sure that you get your meds definitely checked and keep up with what you need to do. And I'm always here. Even in my state, I'm always going to be here for you.
yeah, no, definitely. So let's move over to your relationships growing up because my relationship life's a
Oh,
joke.
stop
So
it. Never heard of such a thing. Let's take that out of the conversation. Go ahead.
no, this is actually a really valid question. So when you dated guys, like, growing up, like, did you, like, were you depressed and anxiety? Did it affect your relationships? Like, I'm really curious.
I think the part that of the anxiety affected the relationship in the sense like I brought you guys up the same way, like you have to be on time and blah 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 blah. So if one of my boyfriends or whatever would like I would always go out, say if I had to be somewhere at 4 o'clock, I would be outside waiting for a pickup at 4:45, which would be the boyfriend picking me up, and then they would show up at 10 after 4, and I was like PO'd, God, forget.
Oh, were
Yeah,
you really?
because in
Oh my goodness,
because
that's horrible. I wasn't
because
like
in
that.
my mind I was like thinking waiting there 25 minutes instead of really 10, but even though the 10 would annoy me because I would never let anybody wait for me. But that's what I'm
Right.
saying. That's what I did with you guys too. But now that I think about that in retrospect, that has no bearing on what's going on in the world. But it did affect me. It did affect me in my relationships. We'd have fights when I would see the person and then I'd be aggravated. But other than that, I would, just anxiety in general was always played into my relationships. Like, oh, if they don't call me back, oh, why didn't he call me? Or, what did I do? Or, things like that.
Like
Yeah. Oh, still
overthinking.
to this day, I do that and I have to stop. I have to stop. But I tell you, I have my routine now, and I have a tools that I use. I use a lot of music like you do. You use your music. I use my encouraging music. I listen to a podcast every day that's with my faith. I have my prayer schedule. I say my rosary every day. Everybody uses their own tools that they need to get through this. So
Right. Yeah, like for me, like I would play music on I've been playing music more on my TV because it's just I feel like the stereo thing is, I mean, I
let's
don't have a
add let's
stereo on
add
my
the note
TV, but
mom and dad's present for Christmas. Go ahead.
my God. Let's just tell the audience that my parents spoil me, sure. Like I'm trying to come up as a badass mom, and you're just basically like, well, we like to spoil our little
No, that's no.
girl.
I'm not saying we spoil it.
I think my sister is gonna listen to this and be like,
Well, we only got
okay.
that for you. Tell them the real reason too that you even suggested getting.
What
Tell them
is
why you
oh
really got it.
all right, yeah. So a little side note. So when my mom visited me for about a week and stayed at my apartment, she was really mad at me because I didn't have a TV. She was like, how do you the thing is that like here, as a millennial, we have our laptops and I just would watch Netflix on my laptop. I didn't really see any need for a TV. And then me and my roommates, we didn't want cable.
Yeah,
So
well,
what's the
that
point?
was a gift for me in
And
retrospect too, because now we're
oh my goodness. Well, I mean, when you come in July, we're not staying at the apartment. We're going to the beach and staying there for two
yes.
weeks. That's gonna
But
be
I'm
fun.
just saying, I did,
Um,
figure that that would be good because it would be that I could get to use it when I visit.
it's really funny. It's actually kind of sad. Is that so? Sometimes, like when I'm like eating dinner or whatever, I still use my computer in like the dining room to watch something because I just don't want to like. It depends what I'm eating, of course. Like I don't want it to be like spilling over my bed and such. But sometimes like if I just want to like on my breaks for work, I usually watch my stuff on my computer because it's faster to pull up Netflix while my TV can take some time to like turn on or whatever. So a lot of times I do still use my computer to watch things just if I need to watch something like really fast. For that reason. And sometimes Netflix is just stupid on my TV. It like
takes a while to load and whatever. But I mostly watch on my TV when it's like I'm basically binge watching something. That's when I mostly use my TV. But no, I like it, and I like how I can like listen to Spotify on there. I also there's a lot of apps on there. Wait, I got you. I also for your Christmas gift, I got you the software that's on my TV, so you can use on your TV. Okay, Mom. So let's talk about your first time in therapy.
Okay, first time in therapy, I think it was when you and your sister were still in school. So I think it might have been, hmm, about 15 years ago. So what would,
Wow. So I was how old was I? 10.
mm-hmm.
I was 10 years old. So I was in like third grade.
Yeah,
No,
around
third
that,
grade. Okay.
about that.
Yeah. All right.
You don't know if I went or not. I used to go. I think I went on weekends.
I
Or
do
when you were
remember
in
you
school.
going.
You do? Yeah, you
Well, I
remember
don't
me
think as
going.
a kid. I think like as a teenager.
Yeah, I used to go every week, and I had him a therapist. He was the sweetest guy for 10 years actually, and then I tried looking elsewhere after that because he retired, and it also started just becoming, to be honest with you, a complaining session. That's what it started to become.
Isn't that
Uh,
how it's supposed to be? Well, okay, no, not really. It's
no,
supposed to be talking about
because
how you feel to certain things, not complaining about your
right, and
about certain topics. Like it's supposed to be going more deep into that.
it was becoming the same thing. It was, he knew my, he knew my life story. He knew about you kids growing up. He knew about my relationships at home. He knew all of that, but it got to the point where it just became a complaining session every week, and it wasn't helping me. So, and he was starting to read, he was going to go into retirement, and I felt, well, this is not working anymore. So I just wound up, I think I started looking on the internet then, and it might have been around that time, 10 years after that, right? Like 10 years. Let me think. I think there was more tools out there with I think I looked up insurances and I looked for another way of getting another therapist, I think, but then I put it on hold and I went probably back into my little depression here and there again. I mean, for me to get out of bed in the morning is such a, I feel like, yes, I don't stay in bed anymore, no matter what. I used to. Remember when you were growing up, I wouldn't come out of my room. Here,
Yeah.
I won't do that anymore. I won't do that anymore because I feel now that with the tools I find, I'm helping myself with the music. I'm helping myself with my prayer. And when I wake up in the morning, I open my eyes and already I can feel the anxiety overwhelm me. That's still
Mhm.
there. It's never going to stop. It's just going to always be a part of me. But like you said, you let yourself feel it. And I feel it knowing that I believe, my faith in God. I believe that He's near me, literally in spirit, and He's guiding me. So I just throw everything to Him. They say, lay it at His feet, and I'm laying it at His feet. And He's been helping me get out of that bed. No matter how late in the day, I'm still getting out of that bed. I'm still getting up and doing things. And I'm very proud of those little things that I do, even though it may not seem that much.
Yeah, and I do remember that as a kid, but I do remember you being in bed all day, and I was like to Dad, I was like, why is she not leaving the room? And then he would always, oh, she has a stomach ache.
Yeah, he'd make excuses. I wasn't feeling well, or
I remember that, and at the
hmm
time I didn't know, so
hmm
I was like, oh, okay, she's probably sick. Maybe she ate something bad.
yeah, yeah.
And he would always cover that up, and I remember when I visited you around Christmas time recently, you did say to me, you're like, I'm not feeling it today. Remember, because we had all these plans to go and, see my sister and her family, and we're going to go and do things. And you're like, I'm not really feeling today or feeling well. And I was like, Mom, we're going. Do you
hmm
remember that? I was
hmm
like, come on, Mom. I'm only here a couple of days. We're doing this.
Well, you did that to me too when we lost Rusty, our pet. Remember?
Oh, yeah. I remember that. That was really triggering. And I remember you were in bed, I think. So it was one whole day you're in bed, which is fine. And then I think it was hitting 2 or 3 days or whatever. I
hmm
think it was, or I don't remember how
It was
long it's
three
been.
days.
It was 3 days. That's what I think I gave you 3
You
days
did.
maximum.
You did. And
I think that's what it was. And then I was like, okay, Mom, you're getting out of bed. I'm over this. Let's go.
I remember it like it was yesterday. You opened the door and you just flew the door open and said, "Okay, Mom, let's go. We got 3 days, babe. 3 days and a half." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like,
I do remember that. Yeah, I get. Okay, I wasn't like, yeah, it was three. It was on the third day.
mm-hmm.
It was on the third day, and I remember like when Rusty passed away, I had to go to work that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was so hard. Oh my God. I was like,
Yes.
people be like, oh, how's your day going? And I'm like, oh, my dog just died like 6 hours ago.
Yes, I know. And that's when you said to me, "Get out of that bed." I mean, see, this is why I'm not, believe me, I'm not like, shooting your horn just to toot your horn. I'm being honest because you got me out of the bed and you I think that's why you and I connect because we're on that level of knowing what we have to deal with. And I look up to you because you come above it. And I'm only coming above it now later in life, but again, it could be all the tools that are out there now too. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason I really agreed and wanted to do this podcast because I want people to realize that there is hope and you can't, like you said, you can't be happy all the time, but you just have to take it a day at a time. And I really believe it's worth it once you do. I mean, you have to make memories one way or another, good or bad. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And I was gonna say something, and it kind of just left my mind
sorry.
as you were
I
talking.
know I've done that too.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, I basically saying like I think it's definitely better and easier for people, not easier, like I'm using the wrong words. But when people notice that they have a mental health issue earlier on, it definitely helps them down the road. Like because like I feel like when you're older and you don't have the tools, it's kind of like you're being like with grandma. She was being more stubborn about it because she was already like had all these issues that it was starting like because it's all about rewiring your brain as well for certain things and how you look at things. And it's just I wish that she stepped forward to help herself earlier on in her life, because she did also had a lot of bad habits, like with her smoking like one pack a day. And
Hmm.
then also not I remember she didn't leave her apartment for a month at one point. Do you remember that?
She didn't ever left her apartment at the end. It was always me coming over and spending time with her and doing her food shopping and giving her that one full day every 2 weeks I gave her. And I know she looked forward to it. And because it was hard for me to be in that position too, because I didn't want to go back to that way, but I knew she was my mom and I helped her as best I could. So
Right. And then I do know that on the outside of it, that you were before I basically put you in your place, you were you were starting to do what grandma
yes.
was doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You were starting to be like just like her, and I was like, no, 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 my mom's not gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
At least you didn't smoke a pack a day, so at least I'm happy about that part.
Mm-hmm.
That you were never a smoker and neither was I, and I'm like, that's like the one good thing that came out of it, is that being around that as a kid and just hating it made me not want to do
Yeah,
it.
I know.
um and then yeah, no, but you were starting, I don't know when you were starting to show those habits. I think I was still living in
Yes.
Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, oh my gosh, she's getting worse. And I was like, oh man, she is going to turn into grandma. She's going to end up being just like grandma.
Mm.
And I was like nervous that you were going to go down that route. And then with you, there were some things that I was showing as well. Like I was having a hard time. Like as I was getting older, and with reality and being an adult and those stressors, I was starting to have those moments where I was staying in bed all day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was younger, I didn't do that. I got up every day, I didn't want to, and I would have the energy to do, my daily day. But for me, like lately over the past 2 years, I was starting to do what you were doing and staying in bed and having a hard time going to work. And I would just like call in, and that's why I'm on FMLAs, because I have a hard time going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh no, I don't want, okay, like I didn't want to turn into that, because I do know you stopped working because of your mental health. And I
Well, not
didn't
necessarily.
want,
I didn't really.
I thought it
No, no,
was.
no. I was very lucky to work for a company for over 16 years, and there was no such thing as FMLA back then, but I did have my episodes where I would call out, oh Lord, I'd say 40 to 50 times a year.
Really?
Yeah, due to the anxiety of myself or the anxiety of your kids growing up. If you had a sniffle, I'd be like, I can't leave them with someone else. I need to be with you. So I'd stay home. Um, and I was very, very lucky that the company that I worked for paid me accordingly and never gave me any problems with it. So then I actually wound up stopping work when they folded. The company folded 16 years after I was with them. And then I started working with your dad for the business. So I was very lucky that I had a company in a way that was kind of like FMLA back for that reason, but what they allowed, but they didn't have to pay me. And, I mean, 40 times a year is a lot. It's like almost once a
Yeah,
week.
right.
So no, I was very lucky that I had that kind of support. They didn't know what the reasoning was. They just accepted it. And I guess I must have been a good worker that they put up with it.
Well, I feel like that's definitely better than me because a lot of times when well, with me, I would have to use like sick time or even vacation days. I had to use. They didn't like just pay. They didn't pay me. I mean, of course, they would allow it so I don't get like penalized for attendance. Like that's what it's there for.
Right.
But I didn't. It's unpaid, and so pretty much like I would have to like I also had to like think be responsible with it because if I didn't have if I just kept calling in and then not getting paid, then it's like, okay, I need to pay rent.
Hmm.
Or like I would have to do Uber, and I'm just very lucky that we have these side hustles these days with using the internet. Like I have Uber that I do from my phone, and then I have One Hope where I do from like computer or phone. I mean, it doesn't always have to be like in on the phone. Like I always talk to people in person too as well, but if people to order had to be on the computer. But
Let me just intercede one more time. That's what I'm saying, that the tools that you have today for this helping yourself is much better now. And I think we've come a long way in a sense in that way that you have access to a lot more than that I did.
yeah, and then also just like build a lot of people are building businesses now because of the ability
Right,
on
right.
online. And it's a lot easier. Well, no, I say easier, the algorithm's horrible, but it's a lot, you're more likely to reach a larger
Right,
audience.
right.
So, I mean, with Dad particularly, it wouldn't really work for his business because he has a foreign business and it's local. I mean, actually, you can in some ways. Like, if you were to set up a Facebook group and then target your audience to local people, like if you do a paid ad that's like $5, for example, you can put like the towns or the location and like the interest and
Right.
whatever, and you can actually target those people if Dad needs like customers or
Yeah, but
whatever.
we're at the point where, almost near retirement at this age, so I don't know.
No, I know it doesn't make
But I'm
any sense
saying
now. I'm just saying that.
I'm not even just talking about entrepreneurship in a sense. I'm talking about you can express with other people on social media that are feeling like you. So you really don't. I mean, there's still therapy that you need through a therapist and through medication, but you also have the outlet of talking to other people that feel the way you do, which is great. You know, we
Yeah, it's having a
Yeah, you're having
voice.
a voice where, like I said, back in my day, you were not allowed, you were seen and not heard expression. I don't know if you know what that meant, but you weren't allowed to
Yeah.
express yourself. So I'm very, very happy that the world's changing in that aspect. And I think that's, a great thing, and pursue it. And you're part of the hope, Justine, with what you do.
Thanks. And then, do you think that there? I mean, obviously the stigma is still there, but in like your particular group, like people your age or whatever, friends or ex family, whatever, do you feel that it's still highly stigmatized?
Um,
Like, of course, naming no names, but
I would say where before it was a good 90% stigma, I think now it's like a 50, because I think 50% now will listen, will will like allow them to hear about it. They may not agree, with with it, but they're willing to listen. But before, no one was willing to listen because they were afraid. Honestly, think about it. We're different from what they are, and they don't want to. The, fear. It's fear. It's fear of the unknown, or it's fear that they don't want to get sucked in a sense. I guess that they think that way, which is not really the way. Um, it's fear. Whenever as I'm getting older, when I see people act out, I don't get angry anymore. I get like I understand. I'm thinking it's coming from their fear. That's where it's coming from. And, and I think age has a lot to do with the wisdom. That's the wisdom that I feel, that I don't get angry anymore. I'm like, well, that's what they think and that's how they feel, accept it and respect it and disagree, what do you call it? Agree to disagree. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
50% now more that they're willing to listen, but not that they're going to act out in any positive way, but it's better than them for not even listening. You understand? So
Right.
that's my thinking. But other than that, I'm, take a day at a time.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So,
All right.
any other
So
questions?
I think I mean, I know I did have a written around a question, but I think we've covered
Hmm.
a lot of really, have a lot of valuable information. So I really do appreciate you, talking on your point of
Thank
view
you.
and your
Thank you.
experience.
I appreciate it.
And yeah, and there were some things I knew and some things that I've learned today from you. So that's, it's always good to know more about my own mother. But
Anything you want to know, honey, just let me ask. Just ask. I mean, mm.
yeah, definitely. All right. And this is typically when I usually tell people, like, oh, follow her on social
No,
media.
that's okay. That's okay.
No, yeah, you don't need to follow my mom on social media. Um,
I'll keep abreast of everything through your social media. How's that?
There you go. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to my podcast. I do upload every single Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, thanks again, Mom, for being on here, and I hope everyone has
Thank
a
you for
lovely day.
having me. Talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.